not great. So Mick kind of didn't want Robert to drive anymore. And we went through, we tried to go through Bulgaria to go to Istanbul, and Bulgaria wouldn't let us in. They looked at us and they said we were dirty hippies and we were not allowed to enter Bulgaria. And Mick got into an argument with the Bulgarian border guard. What do you mean dirty? And I had a bath. I bet you didn't have a bath, he said to the guy. So anyway, yeah, and all this was written to Baba, and Baba got a chuckle out of us not being able to go to Bulgaria because we were hippies and we drove around the southern route through Greece, and we got to Istanbul. And in Istanbul, we was the first place where we stopped and made contact with a lot of road people. On the road, the kind of people that travel, there are bottlenecks, there are places where everybody kind of meets. And one place like that was in Istanbul, the pudding shop, and all these hippies coming and going from Asia and going to Europe were there. And we were just in the middle of it, telling everybody the evils of drugs and the wonders of Meher Baba. And well, unfortunately, there we met with an Australian junkie that Mick and I knew from our previous trip. He was a heroin addict, and Tom left with him. So that was the end of Brother Tom. Tom, instead of staying with us, Tom took off with Australian John to go who knows where. That we lost Tom in Istanbul. And then from there, we went through Syria and Jordan. And when we got to the Jordanese border, we didn't have a visa. I don't know what happened. We got to the Jordanese border and they wouldn't let us, they didn't want to. Oh, I know what happened. They didn't want to give us a visa. We went to the Jordanese embassy and they said, no, hippies and drugs and all, no visa. And so they wouldn't give us a visa. So we went to Jordan, to the Jordanese border anyway, and Robert and Mick had this Arab headgear so you couldn't see their long hair and everything. And we told them we were on pilgrimage to our prophet's birthplace because it was soon to be Christmas, and we were going to Jerusalem and to Bethlehem on pilgrimage to our prophet's birthplace. And that was okay. They allowed that. And so they allowed us into Jordan, and we went to the Dead Sea and camped out. And I remember there were freshwater stream at the Dead Sea, and I was making my laundry, beating rocks with it, kind of washing my clothes there. And Robert walks by and drops his clothes next to me and says, "While you're at it." And Mick was like, "Robert, let me teach you how to do your own clothes." And so Robert had to learn how to wash his clothes. I was not going to wash his clothes for him. And we went to Kuwait because you got $50 American in Kuwait to give blood. But they didn't want mixed blood. He has some weird negative blood group. But Robert and I, we donated blood in Kuwait and for the money. And from there, Baba said we cannot enter India until the 1st of November, 1967. Now, this was Christmas and New Year's of 66, so we had 11 months to go. And the idea was that we're going to take it slow and travel from here to there and spend all this time meeting with people on the road and telling them the evils of drugs. And so we were going to take it slow to get to India by the 1st of November, 1967. We did very peculiar things. One thing, for instance, we wanted to go from, after leaving Kuwait, we went up through Basra and went through Iraq and Baghdad. And there was a pipeline that went from Basra up toward Isfahan, And instead of taking the road, which was way around, we decided it was a desert, it's flat, we'll just drive next to the pipeline and we'll get there. I mean, just the idea. And we stopped in the middle of the desert with the Qashqai tribes, and they in fact tried to see if they could trade me for some camels. They wanted to keep me and give me some camels, but we don't know how many camels I was supposed to be worth, but that didn't happen. And we stayed with them in their tents, and at one point in Iran, we had one spare tire, but we blew two. So we were on 3 wheels only because we didn't have 2 spare tires. So we kind of limped into this caravanserai in the middle of the desert. And we decided that Robert is going to have to go by bus. When the bus comes to the next town, get a new tire and bring it back. And I don't think Robert ever forgave us, because he said, why do I have to go? And we said, because we voted, Robert. It's 2-1. It's your job to go. So Robert had to take the extra rim and go to the next town. Took all day for him to do that and take the bus back. And one other thing that happened in the desert was kind of amazing, and that is we stopped at one point in the desert and put gasoline in the car. We had a gasoline can and kept driving. And in the desert, the sun, when it goes down, it gets very quickly gets dark. And somebody in the back said, is Sita in the front? No, I thought she was in the back. Anyway, when we had put the gas in the car, our dog had jumped out and we had driven off. And it was dark now in the desert. And I did remember there were 3 palm trees on one side. And so we turned around, and the bus, the Volkswagen bus, broke down and stopped. So we're in the middle of the desert. The truck is stopped, the bus is stopped, is broken, and the dog is gone. And a truck came the other direction, and Robert and I flagged down the truck, and we sort of pointed at the desert and said, woof, woof. He thought we were mad. And Mick tried to fix the motor, and Robert and I took the truck toward back the way we were coming, and all we could see was the headlights of the truck in the desert. And we always saw wolves, a lot of wolves. So this is, yeah. So suddenly in the headlight sat the dog, and we stopped the truck, and there were 3 palm trees on the side. The dog had sat exactly where she got out of the truck. And then we saw the headlights from the Volkswagen bus. Mick had managed to fix it, and so we went on our way. And then we went to Karachi, and in Karachi Baba had given us the connection of Minu Karas and Adi Dubash. And we went to see Minu Karas, and here we were with our Volkswagen bus, and we stayed in the bus in front of Minu's house, and Minu was unbelievably hospitable, of course. Wonderful man with his wife, Franny, and his 2 children, Meherji and Goher. And they were 4 and 6 years old, I think, at the time. And we heard from someone that there was an American in Karachi named Tom. And we found him, and it was Brother Tom, it was Mick's brother Tom, and he had given his passport to the American embassy to be repatriated to the United States. And so we went and we bought his passport off of the embassy, and we put Brother Tom in our Volkswagen bus and took him with us. And then from there, we decided that now it was January, and we're not allowed to go into India until November, and we're in Pakistan. So we have what to do. So we drove to Kabul, and we sold the Volkswagen bus. We rented a house in Lahore, Pakistan, and we were going to sit in our house in Lahore, Pakistan until November, when Baba said to come. And we were going to meet with the people that travel to and fro because there's only the Wagah border. It's the only border that's open. So everybody going from India and to Pakistan the other way around had to travel. Our house was on the Firozpur Road, had to travel literally almost in front of our house. And the only people that cross the India-Pakistan border are Westerners, because Indians cannot go to Pakistan and the other way around. So they were and who travels by road? Those were the road bums. And we rented this house very cheap in the neighborhood of Lahore. It had a wall around it because Muslim homes always, are walled around so the women can be uncovered. And we drove to Kabul and we sold the Volkswagen bus in Kabul for more than we paid for it in Frankfurt, actually. And came back and stayed in our house in Lahore with Tom and the dog and Robert and Mick and I. And pretty soon people started coming, and we invited people, and the word just was out. I don't know how that happens, but people know that they can come and stay with us. So we had decided that we cannot ask them not to take drugs or bring drugs to our house, because if we do ask them not to bring drugs to our house or smoke dope in our house, then they didn't want to come. So there was an unending stream of people coming to our house from Pakistan, from India, and going to Europe and the other way around. And apparently our house was known from London to Singapore, somebody told me once. And they sat there smoking dope. And we sat there preaching Meher Baba and the evils of drugs. And on the wall, we had these big posters of the 10 states of God and all this, the evolution and all the Baba information. And Minu had given us quite a bit of Baba pamphlets and booklets and stuff, and we had brought some from America as well. And so one day, the Pakistani secret police, the Pakistani CIA, came to the door, and they said that they understand we have this person in India, and they thought we were spies, and they were going to investigate us. And we loaded the guy up with Baba books and Baba pamphlets and everything, and he never came back. So apparently we convinced them that we were okay. And one day, we were sitting there, and there was this American from Los Angeles, and he was smoking a joint. And Robert said, "Are you going to pass that thing?" And passed it to Robert, and Robert passed it to me, and I passed it to Mick. And the three of us got stoned with these people that were staying with us. And this was kind of, I have no idea why we did that, but anyway, we did. And meanwhile, I should also say it was getting warmer and warmer. It was 120 degrees in Lahore around that time. It was unbelievable. It's one of the hottest places on earth, I'm convinced. So we sat there, we got stoned for a day or two with our people. And then we got very guilty, and we wrote to Baba, and we confessed, and we told him, "Oh, Baba, we're so sorry, and we've, that we have disobeyed him and everything." And he wrote back, and the letters from him, the way he answered was so unbelievably sweet and loving and compassionate. Yesterday, Heather said that Eric said to her at one point that Baba was too compassionate. Indeed, he was just, he would even sort of butter us up in these letters and say, "You have done such great work for me. After you've done such great work for me, and I forgive you, and I love you," and unbelievable. And so that was that. But then he said, were not to enter India until the 1st of January 1968. So now we're there, it's the summer in Lahore, and now he's moved that from November to January for us to go into India. And then after a few days, we all got stoned again. And we wrote to Baba again. And we told him again. And he was just as sweet and compassionate, but he was a little bit more. Erich was writing these letters. It was like, Mir Baba does not want you ever to do this again. And it was a little bit more serious. And Robert said, I'm leaving. I'm going, I'm not staying here until January. I'm going back to Europe, and packed up to leave. Meanwhile, Brother Tom, I had forgotten, Brother Tom did not have the order not to go to India. So Brother Tom went to India at some point. And from India, he allowed himself to be repatriated by the American government back to the United States. So Tom was in the United States. Robert was on the way to Europe. And Mick and I were in Lahore, and the dog in Lahore in our house, waiting for January. Then all of a sudden we started feeling very ill, and we got hepatitis. And hepatitis, the kind that you get from food, not injection. And we got news from Tom in the United States. He was sick with hepatitis, and Robert was in the hospital in Istanbul with hepatitis, and all four of us were ill. And Mick got so ill that he had to go to the hospital in Lahore, Muhammad Ali Jinnah Hospital, and the blankets in the hospital were red because the nurse told me that's so you don't see the blood on the blankets. And I was also sick, but not nearly as sick. I mean, I could feel my liver and I couldn't really eat and all that. So Mick got sicker and sicker. And incidentally, his roommate in the hospital was one of the sons of Papa Doc from Haiti. Apparently, Papa Doc had a lot of sons, and one of his sons was a hippie that was traveling in Asia and got hepatitis and was Mick's roommate. So Mick got so ill that I was actually thinking he would die. And I didn't know what to do. He weighed 87 pounds. And I didn't know what to do. I contacted Minu in Karachi. I said, I don't know what to do. Minu said, bring him now. So I went to the hospital in Lahore, and I put Mick in a wheelchair, and I wheeled him to the airport we took him to the airport and flew from Lahore to Karachi, went to Minu's house and gave him to Minu. And Minu put Mick in his bed and sat by his side and really healed him, I think. I mean, not healed him, Mick was quite sick. He had also gotten pleurisy. His lungs were filling up with water. So he weighed 87 pounds and he was breathing like, and Minu sat by his bedside, Minu Karas. And so and the dog, there was a couple from an American couple, they were Quakers in Lahore, and they took our dog. They said, it was okay, and they kept the dog. And so we stayed in Karachi until Mick got a little bit better. And Minu, and all this time, we were in correspondence with Baba. But then we got a letter from Baba saying that our entrance into India had been postponed indefinitely, and he was going to call us when he calls his other Western lovers. And another thing happened when we were first with Minu. We told Minu that the reason we brought the dog is when we go see Baba again, we will give the dog to Baba as a present. And the next letter from Baba was, And when you come, do not bring your dog. Minu had ratted us out too, and told Baba about it. And so Minu said, yeah, but you know what you do when you go? You just tie the dog up at the gates of Meherana, and the dog will bark, and Baba will say, what's going on? And you say, well, we didn't bring the dog because you didn't want him. And the dog is outside, and the dog is barking, and Baba will say, bring in the dog. But of course, we never met Baba again. So that was just another kind of funny story. Oh, another thing that in all these letters from Baba that happened was when we went in Shiraz to the tomb of Hafiz. We of course wrote to Baba, oh, we went to the tomb of your favorite poet, and Baba wrote back and said, no tombs, do not visit tombs, no tombs, it's not necessary for you to go to these tombs. So he had all kinds of things to say, and he asked us not. So at some point, somebody had the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and Baba said, do not read that, and things like that. When we were in Santa Barbara, there was some guy that visited with us. He said, oh, some guru said you shouldn't be sleeping in the same room with your dog because the dog's soul, when you sleep and the sanskar or whatever, some nonsense. So we wrote to Baba and we said, Baba, should we sleep in the same room with our dog? And Baba wrote back and said, of course, no problem, sleep in the same room with your dog. I mean, this is the kind of, we really paid very little attention to the fact that he was in seclusion. We had a direct line with him, and we pestered him and asked him and talked anything that we could come up with. We would talk, and he answered all of it. So now we were sick in Karachi, and Baba said not to come to India indefinitely. And then the next thing that came was a printed form letter from Adi that said Meher Baba will no longer entertain any correspondence. And that was really hard on us because, I mean, this was our lifeline. We asked him anything. He was our friend. We were really very desperate, sick, broke, had no money anymore, and no connection to Baba, not being able to write, and no date to come to India. So Adi Dubash and Minu Karas and the Karachi Baba group put money together and bought us 2 plane tickets to Europe, to Istanbul, for us to leave Pakistan. And they paid for it because we didn't have any money. And we flew to Istanbul, and we took a train to Frankfurt, and my sister, we didn't have a place to stay in Frankfurt. My sister had some issue with her husband, had left her and all this, and so we couldn't stay there. So eventually we traveled around a little bit in Europe, and eventually we settled in Frankfurt, and we rented a room, and we got a job, and we worked, and we lived in Frankfurt. And we wrote to Baba, and Baba had said, we can tell them when we can give change of address. So we wrote to Baba or to Adi and said that we have a new address. We live in Frankfurt now, and but we would like permission to write to Baba if we can. And Adi wrote back and said, Baba gives you permission to write to him anything you want. And we packed everything in that letter that we could think of that we wanted to tell him, and he wrote back a letter with 10 points. We addressed every single point, what about the past and the future and what we should do. And it's very, very kind of intimate instructions from him. And that's the last time we communicated with him personally. And we stayed in Frankfurt until, for almost a year. And then we came, when we had enough money, we flew to New York, and we landed in New York on the 1st of April, 1968. And we hitchhiked. No, we did a drive away, some New York taxi cab thing where you drive away. And we came to Berkeley because Robert was in Berkeley. And we settled in Berkeley in 1968. And that was sort of our life. Now it's not. So I have more time, and I'm not sure if maybe we should open to questions, do you think?
Yes, we can do that. I'm going to open up chat, and I'm going to request that people raise their hand so that I can actually spotlight them so that they
And
can.
will you be able to
Go ahead.
engineer that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll be.
Okay, because I can't see.
So please raise your hands if you have questions, and then I can spotlight you. And okay, so first up is Betty and Dave. Let me spotlight them. And
I was wondering, Ursula, in 1968, and did you then start meeting Baba people and talking about your experiences or any of that?
Oh yeah, immediately when we came to Berkeley, we settled in Berkeley because Robert was here, and we very quickly met Rick and Alan and all the local 60s Baba people in Berkeley, and Mick generally was the one who talked. I wasn't really, I wasn't really the talker. Mick was more the talker. Yes, we gave Baba talks, and we got involved in the Berkeley Baba group, the Baba League in Berkeley, and we had meetings at the university in Berkeley, and eventually I got a job. Robert and I both got a job with John F. Kennedy High School in Richmond, California. We were the in-house drug counselors, and I worked as a drug counselor for a couple of years. It was through Alan Cohen. And then I got another job with the Johns Hopkins University, a study on the effects of methadone on heroin addicts. So I did a certain amount of drug work. But in Berkeley, we lived on Channing Way, and in the house, everybody lived on Channing Way. Mick and I lived in the back. Robert and Scott McKay lived in the front. A whole bunch of Sufis lived there, and Cindy Gumpel lived there, and lots of Baba people lived there. And the front house had a downstairs that was empty and had a dirt floor, the apartment. And the reason was that it was too low to be allowed as a living space. And so the landlord must have hired somebody to try to dig down to make the ceiling so it was higher. And he gave that up. And so it's his apartment with the dirt floor. So we asked the landlord if we could rent it, and we rented it for $25 a month. And everybody helped, and it's sort of find a need and fill it. We had the cement chute stuck in the window, and we poured a cement floor. And Robert was a gardener at a church, and he got the free church pews from the church, and we put those in, and we created. Baba was still in the body, and we wrote to him, and we sent him photographs of it. And we called, Ivy Deuce named it Meherstan. She gave it the name Meherstan, and we built a Baba center in the building in front of us, Meherstan. And that went on for some years, actually. So yes, we were very involved in the whole Baba situation in Berkeley.
next is Diane and Terry.
Hi. When you were kind of in limbo land, when you were in Europe, and he had said that it's indefinite, how did you not feel abandoned or angry or?
Well, I was keenly aware of the fact that we had disobeyed him, and pretty seriously disobeyed him. We had his order not to take drugs, and he wanted us to help people to stop taking drugs. So the idea that all of a sudden I feel he abandoned me, no, that never came to mind to me. But the other thing that I wanted to say is that we wrote these letters to him. You see that we're taking drugs, we started taking drugs again, now we stopped, and then we started again. And he was in very strict seclusion. And in 1981, I was in Australia with Phyllis Frederick, and I visited with Francis Brabazon, and I had met him in 1969 at the Darshan. And Francis, I spent a lot of times just sitting with him, and he, at some point, the light bulb went on, and Francis said, "It was you that wrote those letters?" And he made the most disgusted face when he remembered those letters. And it just only then really occurred to me how the Mandali, when he was in seclusion, were trying everything to keep him as happy as possible and as comfortable as possible, and how they did everything to help him with his seclusion. And then these letters would come, these assholes, excuse me, people out there writing saying, "Oh, and here we take drugs again, Baba, we're sorry," and unbelievable. I think if the Mandali had us there, they would have pummeled us. And it really never occurred to me how invasive and it was that we just sort of fell in there all the time with our little lives,
Such blind selfishness.
Yeah, well, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you were how old at this point?
I was, when I met Baba when I was 21, and I came to the United States when I was 23, to Berkeley when I was 23.
I just can't get over the story. I'm sorry, but it is.
I don't know how.
I would
why
have
it's
had
not
a heart
film.
attack, peed my pants. I don't know. I would have been so nervous. Did you feel Baba in you? Like, did you feel like there was some kind of saved feeling inside that you wouldn't get into trouble with all of it? And
well, yes, we had obviously a guardian angel, whether we knew this or not. But in hindsight, when you think the chances, even before we met Baba, the chances we took were absolutely unbelievable. Did you hear my talk on Friday? Yeah, when we went from Nepal to Japan, we had 5 pounds of drugs in a cloth bag, and we crossed with that from Nepal to India, India to Burma, Burma to Thailand, to Malaysia, to Singapore, to Vietnam, to Hong Kong, to Japan. And I mean, any of those countries would have hung us. And we just walked in. We were just crazy, the kind of chances we took, and hitchhiking in India and in Pakistan. I mean, the truck drivers, especially in Pakistan, would be absolutely stoned out of their mind. And because you saw them smoke, and they drive through the Hindu Kush Mountains, with thousands of feet drop off in a 1-lane road, and then another truck comes, and that guy's stoned too because your guy's stoned, and you drive like that, and I mean, how we survived, and eating the food, and that we only got sick in Lahore. All the other time, I mean, the kind of food we ate off carts on the street, and. Yes, I think
you must be the best well-traveled person, however, in the whole world.
No. There are people.
The luck of the naive.
Did you get back to India?
Many times.
Oh, good.
Yes, 69 was the first time. And then after that, the first time after 69 was when I was married to Ed Van Buskirk, and we went in 1977 after our marriage. And then we used to go, I was a travel agent for a while, some years ago, and I would take tours to India, Baba people that, mainly Sufis that didn't want to travel by themselves. I would put these tours together of like 15, 20 Baba people and take them to India. And I did that twice a year for a number of years.
Thank you so much. This is just
You're
best.
welcome.
Thank you.
Next question is Jean McDonald.
Jay Baba, Ursula, can you talk a little bit more about 69 and the darshan?
Yeah, I had never met any of the Mandli, really, except for Adi. And Erich sat in Mandli Hall over here, but I never was introduced to him. So I was very eager in 69 to meet them all because I knew so much about them. And Erich, we had corresponded for all these years, you know, either Adi or Erich would be correspondent with us from Baba. And so, of course, the fact that Baba wasn't there anymore is in the body was really sad for me. And when I went the day that we went to Merzad, I sat in the same spot that I sat when I saw Baba, and he wasn't in his chair that I could see. And I got very sad. I started to cry. But it was such a love feast to meet Mani and meet Mera and Francis, and it was just a wonderful, wonderful trip. And you know, he invited us, and we went. And I remember when Erich said, "It's 9 o'clock. You've kept your appointment with God." And to me, that was so meaningful because the only other time I had an appointment with God at 9 o'clock was when we met Baba, and so it was bittersweet in a way because he wasn't there, but we also knew all along that he had planned it that way.
Our next question is from Susan Zaker.
Yes?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you so much for your wonderful sharing. It was unbelievable. I have a quick question. I don't want to take too much time, but I was wondering if Baba was in body right now, in this time that we are, and all this marijuana free planting and available everywhere, and it's, you know, it's this marijuana things. What do you think Baba would think about it, and what would tell you to tell people that they are using marijuana and planting and
Well,
being so available for everyone, all the kids? Even I heard that you call them, they deliver to your house.
yes, I know. Well, Baba said that it was harmful spiritually, mentally, and physically. And I think people are really not aware of the spiritual harm it does. That's sort of not well known, but mentally, it seems to me pretty obvious that people who are habitual marijuana users are kind of getting goofy in the head a little bit and forgetful, and it seems to have a bit of a dementia side effect in the long run. And healthy, well, I don't know what it does to the lungs, and I don't know what it does to all the additives that are in there. So all the way around, I don't think it's a good thing, and I don't know what Baba would say. because he always said that obey the laws of the land, and I don't know, but I'm sure he would still say the same thing, that it's not healthy physically, mentally, and spiritually. I think he would certainly not change his mind on that. So
Okay,
I
thank
would
you so much.
feel, yeah.
I appreciate.
Ursula,
Hmm?
have you written a book or are going to write a book?
Well, yeah,
Would you write a book?
yes, I did write down quite a bit of stuff, but it's difficult to get that, to find somebody to publish that.
Ursula, there's a question about your relationship with Phyllis Frederick and Ivy Deuce. Can you talk about that?
Well, Baba told me to get in touch with Phyllis Frederick when we go to Los Angeles, and we did. And Phyllis has, at some point, Phyllis told me that she was never married and she never had any children in this life. And that at some point, Baba told her she would meet her children. And she had memories and sometimes visions of people. And she felt that a number of the young Baba people were actually her children from her past life, that Baba gave her that, Baba allowed that to happen, that she would meet them again. And she felt very strongly about that. And at some point, she said that she remembered that I was her daughter. And in fact, that was a very sweet story. And who knows, I mean, these are Phyllis's visions, but it was when we were in Australia. She said that she had this vision of being a farmer woman in India, in Benares, and many couple thousand years ago. And she was sitting in the farmer's market with her basket selling her vegetables. And I was her baby and I was in her lap and I was playing with the end of her sari. And there were these feet that were in front of the basket. And she looked up and she said it was the Buddha. And that he smiled at her and gave her namaskar and she smiled back. So I thought that was very cool. That's Phyllis's remembrance. Ivy Deuce, when we were in Santa Barbara, we came up to meet with her and with Don Stevens at the Sufi Center in Walnut Creek. And we also to buy some Baba books and stuff. And it's the first time we met her. And we told her that it was in the time that we had already decided to go back on the road. And we told her that we were doing that. And she said, oh, why would you do that? There's so much drug work to be done here. You should stay here and do drug work here. I mean, it's exactly what Baba said, actually, you know, but she didn't think it was a good idea for us to go back on the road at all. But Phyllis was friends with Ivy Deuce, and she used to come up and visit her and stay with her. And Phyllis had this funny story. Ivy Deuce liked to go to a place called Gump's. It was a place in San Francisco that was very high-end antiques and stuff. And Phyllis was kind of a hippie at heart. She always had her hair hanging down and stuff. And she would have to go with Ivy Deuce to Gump's, and Ivy Deuce would give her a pair of gloves to wear, because this is what you do when you go to Gump's, you wear gloves. So Phyllis would go to Gump's with Ivy Deuce and her gloves. Yes.
Kelvin?
Thank you. Ursula, do you think that Baba's injunction against drugs applies also to the CBD oil and products that don't have any mood altering, that only use the healing properties of the plant?
No, actually, I don't, because Baba said to us in these letters, he said that we were permitted to take drugs for medicinal purposes only. So
Okay.
in other words, painkillers or something like that was okay, as long as they were prescribed and they were medicinal. So I don't know much about CBD oil, but I do understand it doesn't have the THC in it.
Right.
So I don't see any problem with it, but then I'm not an expert
Thank you so much.
Next question, Rick.
Yes.
Rick Chapman. Could you unmute?
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
I didn't have a question. I had a comment. In the midst of the talk of my old friend Ursula. And it is a comment with regard to the questions about drugs.
Thank you. Good.
I feel that what Baba said in the 60s applies precisely today and will apply throughout the period of his advent and until his next one. He made quite clear that the legal or illegal was absolutely harmful physically, mentally, and spiritually, unless it was specifically under the guidance of licensed professional medical experts and for specific medical issues. The possibility of confusion, because pot is legal now, is so extreme that that point needs to be reiterated over and over and over. Baba would not approve any use of any marijuana derivative for the purpose of getting high, relaxing, enjoying life, unwinding, nor would he approve any psychedelic for exploring one's consciousness. But he was so avataric in his prescience about what was to come that he made specific reference that medical use of any drug is not included in these prohibitions. And of course, the cannabinol derivatives that don't involve getting high, but are treatments for a variety of ailments and illnesses, don't fall into the same category. Nor will the use of psychedelics by responsible and professional medical experts in treatment of mental and emotional problems. But that line is so easy to blur so that a hotshot doc, because he's got a medical license, who also believes that psychedelics are the next new wave to open up consciousness, can violate that, the spirit of Baba's direction. So it behooves us to understand very clearly that Baba has stated the use of these drugs for any other than a specific medical purpose as prescribed by a medical doctor is forbidden from him. Now, who do you want to please? If you aren't interested in pleasing him or taking his advice, cool, that's your business. But if you're interested in what Meher Baba says, I've recently written a book that has yet to be published. Ursula's talking while I'm trying to edit the damn thing. Its title might not show up here, but it's Bug Consciousness, Drug Consciousness, and Flying Rug Consciousness. And it traces the history of Baba's evolution of his drug message. Now, Ursula, please forgive my interruption.
No, I totally appreciate it. You're the top guy on this, really.
Actually, there's a topper guy than me, and that's Alan Cohen, because he's spent most of his adult life directing people to the right thinking of drugs. But we just must be clear. And I'm so appreciative that the question came up and that you've said what you said. Baba would not approve the use of these drugs. And if they're legal and given out free and sent to everybody every week in the mail, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What matters is what he had to say. Okay, I'm off. Thanks.
That was very nice. Thank you very much, Rick. It was very helpful.
We have a question from Houdini.
I'm sorry.
Hugh, can you unmute?
I
again?
tried to, but somehow it reversed itself.
That was me.
Okay. I am trying to imagine you being in Monley Hall, and I'm wondering if any dogs barked when you were in I'm wondering if when you're in Monley Hall, were you sitting against the wall or were you
Yes.
close to Baba's feet?
No, against the wall, under the clock,
Ah, yes, very nice.
directly opposite him, against the wall.
Huh. And was there somebody next to Baba doing interpreting, or Erich was
No,
sitting in
Erich
his
was sitting where Erich sits, in that kind of little
Corner.
corner there at the window. And the men Mandali were sitting in a circle on the floor, further toward the back door. I mean, not real close in, a little bit further. And the only other two people was Adi was sitting next to Baba on the floor, but Adi did not translate. And Erich was sitting where that poof is, where the Erich, yeah. And so Baba's voice was coming from there, and Mick and I sat directly opposite Baba under the clock.
Thanks, it helps to imagine it. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. There was something else I wanted to say, and that is people wonder maybe why I am telling this, that we started taking drugs again and disobeying Baba. And in fact, both Robert and Mick were heavily against my telling that. When the first time I gave a talk somewhere, it might have been LA, they were very upset with me, because they did not feel this should be made public. But it's my life, and I have a right to speak about my life. And I'm sorry, my dog. And if it involves other people, well, that's just too bad. It still is my life. And my reason for telling that is really primarily his compassion and his forgiveness, and how I think people may disobey Baba and then be all guilt-ridden and, oh, what did I do? Oh my God, and not forgive themselves. And so I really feel like it's important to share his compassion and his forgiveness. It was limitless. It was, but I mean, he got heavier, his letters he got more serious with, but you may not ever, and underlined in capital and like that, but his love and compassion and care for us just never diminished after, after we got sick, and especially Mick got sick. He wrote and said that what we should do, and we should drink sugarcane juice. It's good for hepatitis and stuff like that. So my primary reason for this kind of sort of true confession is to share his compassion, if that makes sense.
So if there are no more questions, thank you so much, Ursula.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody. I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the whole, what part of the Meherana Sahavas, and I'd like to thank Ralph and Kebi and all the other arrangement wallahs and Jyoti and with the computerization and so on. Thank you very, very much. It was really lovely. Jai Baba.